Can you spot the difference? Today we're going to be testing out the brand new Pro V to see just what the differences are between the new one and the previous model.
That is really spinny.
Yeah, that's definitely gone further.
So today we're going to be taking a look at the data of the new Pro V and the Pro V1x to see just how they compare to the previous models. Now we've got a slightly softer cover on these, so I think we should see a little bit more spin, and they may also feel a little softer. In terms of distance, these are set to be the longest Pro Vs yet, so we're really interested to see if we get more distance on our irons and drivers. Now, I play with the Pro V, so I'm going to be testing this one out, but I do not use the Pro V1x typically, so I've roped in professional golfer Nick Marsh to come and help me out. Now keep your eyes out throughout this review, because you're going to get the chance to win a year's supply of Titleist golf balls. Right, let's get on with it. So first up, we're just going to hit a few putts with both the new model and the previous version and just see if we can actually feel any differences on the greens. I definitely think the new model feels a little bit softer in the Pro V1. What do you think about the Pro V1x?
Definitely feels a little bit more softer and definitely more solid.
Now we have got a softer cover on the golf ball this year, so it's definitely going to account for some of that difference in feel, but I wouldn't say it's a massive change from before, so if you like the feel of the Pro V1 already, I wouldn't be worried about that. Okay, so I'm on a par 3 here at Rudding Park, and I'm just going to hit a few shots with my 7-iron with both the previous Pro V1 and the new 2021 ball. And I really want to look at the data and see the difference in terms of spin, fly, launch. First up, I'm going to hit the old Pro V1 just to set some benchmark data that we can compare against. Okay, so that launched at 18.5 degrees and the backspin was at 5,772. Fairly consistent so far. All my spin numbers have come out in the high 5,000s or the low 6,000s, and my launch angles have all been pretty similar too. Right, so I've hit 5 shots there. The spin average came out at 6,109, which was perhaps a little bit lower than I might have expected, and the launch came out at 16.9. My first shot definitely launched the highest, up at 18.5, and the rest were pretty consistent. Now let's go back and hit this year's new golf ball and see what the differences are. Felt very similar, looked like it launched a little bit higher to me. Yeah, so the launch has come out at 19.7 there, and we've also got more backspin. That's come out at 6,848, so that's definitely my highest spinning shot so far. It's quite interesting that that flew a little bit higher. I tend to use the Pro V1 over the Pro V1x because it flies a little bit lower, and I already flight it quite high. So it'll be definitely interesting to see if I keep getting that slightly higher flight throughout the rest of the shots. Okay, I pulled that quite a lot, so it did launch lower at 16.6, but again the spin numbers were up higher, so 6,673. I'd definitely be pretty pleased with that. So that shot spun the lowest so far at 6,184, which is still higher than the average that we saw with the previous Pro V. So in the end, the average spin there came out at 6,272, which is a bit lower than the initial shots I hit, but my last 2 I hit a little bit further and the spin went down a little bit, but it was still in the high 5,000s. Now the big difference here was actually in the launch, so the average launch here went up to 18.5, which is nearly 2 degrees higher than we saw with the previous Pro V1, which is definitely quite a big jump. But I would say even though it went higher, it was still like a nice penetrating flight. It wasn't really kind of floaty, kind of high flight that you would lose in the wind. So in terms of trajectory, I was still really happy with the flight. So we're going to follow exactly the same process now with the Pro V1x. Nick's going to hit this and he's going to hit the old one first, and then we're going to compare it to the new golf ball and just look at the data.
Take that.
Okay, so what were the numbers on that one?
Launch was 18 degrees and the backspin was 6,498.
And would you say that flew typically how you would expect it to?
Yeah, that flew pretty good. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Yeah, very similar again. 17.4 launch and 6,345 backspin. So pretty good.
So from the 5 shots there, the average spin came out at 6,630 and the launch angle was at 17.8. So can we go hit 5 with the new Pro V1x now and just see if those numbers change at all? That looked like it launched a little bit higher to me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it launched at 18.2.
That's quite interesting then. Across both models we've seen initially that the balls launched a little bit higher with the newer version compared to the older one.
That felt really good. 18 degrees of launch, very
Spins
consistent.
jumped up a little bit there
Yeah.
then into the 7,000s too. Now I know you're particularly picky about the feel of a golf ball.
Definitely.
So would you say this feels any different to the previous version?
Feels really good, really solid. The launch is coming out slightly higher as well, which is what I like. I've always been somebody who's like struggled to flight it a bit with my irons, so I'm really liking this flight so far. It's just peaking really nicely.
Seems to be flying very consistently
Yeah, it's
anyway.
really
That
good, yeah.
literally pitched on top of the last one.
Wow, super consistent.
Okay, so when we drop back into the averages there, they were spinning at 6,736, which is about 100 RPM more than we saw with the previous version, and the launch had gone up, but only by about 0.7. So not quite as much as I saw with the Pro V, but there definitely is a little bit extra launch there. Right, let's go hit some drives and see what the data is there. It's going to be pretty interesting to see, specifically if we pick up any distance with the new ball. But let's hit the old version first and then we'll go back and compare. Okay, so we're slightly uphill into the wind here. That's carried 221, it's spun at 2,776 and launched at 13.6. Pretty consistently in terms of launch. That came out at 13.4 and it also carried 221, which is pretty weird. The spin went up a little bit there, it was just in the low 3,000s. Carry went up a little bit there to 228, launch angle very similar at 13.4. I pulled that a little bit left and the spin has dropped down to 2,000. So the averages there ended up at 222 in terms of carry. My launch was at 13.5 and then the average spin was just over 2,500. Now let's go hit the new golf ball and see what changes we can see. Did actually feel like it came off the face a little bit faster. Okay, it's carried 227, which is bigger than the average we saw before and 1 yard shorter than the longest shot we saw with the previous golf ball. Spin seems to be coming out a little bit lower so far. That was down at 1,800, but then the launch was actually up at 15.5. That one definitely looked like it flew a little bit further in the air. Yeah, so that's come out at 229, which is definitely my longest shot so far. The launch was down a little bit from the previous one at 14, and my spin was pretty much at 2,000. think that was the longest so far. The numbers were actually really interesting there. I was spinning the new golf ball 500 RPM less at just over 2,000, and I saw an extra 3 yards in distance, so definitely a little bit more in terms of ball speed and distance there, but it's not massive. Let's go see if Nick manages to get any more distance out of the Pro V1x.
So that flew 272 yards with a launch angle of 12.5, 272 carry, 2,676 spin, and launched at 12.5. $277 carry, again 12.3 launch and 2,375 spin. $11.6 launch with 2,700 spin, and again 275 carry.
Only going a little bit further than my shots were then. So can we go hit 5 with the new Pro V1x now and just see if those numbers change at all?
Oh yeah, that's definitely flown higher. Yeah, that was 14.7 launch. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's definitely gone further. Yeah, 290 through the air. Wow.
So I would say we got some pretty interesting data there. Although your spin was pretty similar between both models, the launch went up a degree, and you did notice that when you were hitting shots, and also your carry distance went up 10 yards, which is a bit insane. How did you feel the performance was when you were actually hitting them?
Oh, brilliant. You know, I've always been somebody who's struggled to just launch it that little bit. So this ball is brilliant for me. You know, it was launching a little bit higher and I've gained 10 yards, so can't really argue with that.
You'll be after that year's supply you can win.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talking about that, if you're wanting to win the year's supply of golf balls, here's how you can get involved. All you need to do is make sure you subscribe to our channel, and also make sure you subscribe to the Titleist channel, and then comment below with which golf ball you would like to use, the Pro V1 or the Pro V1x. Right, let's get back to the review. So I've got 95 yards to the pin now, and I really want to take a look at what those spin numbers and launch characteristics are going to be and how they're going to differ when you're doing a kind of pitch like this. So again, I'm going to hit the old Pro V1 first. So that launched pretty high up at 31.2 degrees, but then the spin was fairly low. It was just under 5,000, but then again, the grass is a bit long here, and we've had quite a lot of rain overnight, so I'm not really surprised to see it drop down a little bit. So definitely struck that a bit better. The launch has come down to 27.7 and the spins come up into the 7,000s. Okay, that was really good. I could see that spinning back on the green, and that spun up at 7,573. It also launched at 27.9 and it carried 98 yards. Now let's go and hit the new Pro V1 and see if we notice any differences. Now, although I like the Pro V1 for the launch characteristics, I do find sometimes the X spins a little bit more, especially in short game scenarios, so it'll be really interesting to see if we get a little bit more spin with this new Pro V. Definitely flew a bit further, and that spun up in the 9,000s. So I was at 9,723, which is definitely a pretty big jump from what we've seen before, even in these kind of damp conditions. That's also flown 99 yards, and it's launched down at 24.2. I can just feel that it's spinning more. It definitely does look like it's launching a bit lower too. I do prefer that because if anything my flight can get a bit too high. So that's spun at 9,120, it's launched at 26.4 and it's carried 95 yards. I can see that's backing up loads on the green without even looking at the numbers. I can see there's more spin with this. Okay, that one went very high. Stopped dead though.
I think I definitely got quite a lot of grass on that one because the spin has dropped down significantly. It was only in the 3000s, which is definitely not representative of what we've seen before. It also launched up at 35.5 and the carry was over 100 yards. Definitely a little bit of a flyer there. That is really spinny. Yeah, that was my highest yet. That spun at 9,816. The launch was back down again at 25.7 and it carried 98 yards. So I'd say other than that one flyer I got, which there was definitely a lot of grass under the ball, these have been really consistent in terms of spin, and it's also been a lot higher than what we saw previously.
That one landed at 104, launched at 30 degrees and spun at 7,400.
Now let's go back and hit this year's new golf ball and see what the differences are.
Yeah, you can definitely see that spinning a lot more. Oh, go in. That actually feels really soft. Okay, so with the new ball, the launch has gone down a touch to 27 degrees, but the spin has also come up slightly more, which is what I like about this new ball.
Okay, that was definitely pretty interesting. I would say across both models, what me and Nick saw was a little bit of an increase in launch. We also saw a little bit more spin in the short irons and the wedges, but then with driver, I actually saw a drop off in spin, which was definitely helping me get a little bit more yardage. Now I gained about 3 yards with both my 7-iron and my driver. However, I was a little bit jealous of Nick because he managed to gain 7 yards with his 7-iron and 10 with his driver, which is definitely a massive difference. Somehow I don't think I'm going to be getting those golf balls back off him. For me, my favourite thing was the increase in spin for my short game, because that is a property that I would really like more of, but I do still like that lower launch that is offered in the Pro V. For Nick, he was the opposite. He actually liked the fact that the Pro V1x launched higher because he wanted more launch throughout his game. Across both models, we also noticed these felt a little bit softer, especially on short game shots, and for me that was definitely something I prefer. Definitely some pretty big noticeable changes from this to the previous model, so make sure you get your hands on these and check them out this year. Right, that's all for today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and make sure you enter our giveaway by telling us which golf ball you prefer to use in the comments and subscribing to our channel and the Titleist channel too. And if you're after more golf content, head over to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.